Fair warning, this topic is definitely, even though everything I've been through and some of you guys I've talked to you one-on-one privately, it's still a little embarrassing and hard for me to kind of share certain things, but I've been getting so many messages, and I knew this would happen, right? Like the minute I started sharing things more publicly about what was going on with me and really sharing about my surgery, I was gonna get a lot of questions, which I want to help other women, especially because I feel like there's a lot of issues intestinally, pelvically, female organ related that females just don't talk about, or you guys are nervous to ask, or you won't ask your doctors. And if your doctor doesn't seem to ask those questions, then you may not know what's going on is not normal, and then you'll just never ask. And that's kind of what happened to me, is that there was a lot of things that were going on with me that I just kind of dismissed as, oh, this is normal for my body, and never thought to ask a doctor. And let's just think about this for a second when it comes to actually stool and poop. Like, I'm going to talk about it. But in our society, it's like this weird, icky, gross thing that people never want to talk about, right? They're like, you ever really are asked any questions specifically about stool is when your children are newborns. Think about it. Like, how many dirty diapers does your baby have and how many wet diapers? It's like really the only time I really got questions about stool. And then other than that, I didn't really even come. Oh, my phone is at 20%. Let me make sure that's charging. That's the last thing we want, right? Is to lose battery. Okay, I think we're good. Where was I? What was I saying? Okay, so specialist gyno that I saw who had my hysterectomy kind of started asking questions about this. Literally, when he started asking me questions, I was like, how do you know my secret shame? Is like what I literally thought in my head. And I was so embarrassed, but it's like, okay, we're all adults here. We should be all able to talk about our poop. It shouldn't be this like weird, icky, gross thing to talk about, because in all fairness, like especially when it comes to your stools, they really are an indicator, and they're gonna tell you when something is wrong in your body. This is why a lot of people have a lot of problems, is that they're just not paying attention to what their body is trying to tell them. I'm gonna go over some of the things that were going on with me. If you don't know, so this journey has been really long for me, okay, for one thing. This did not just happen overnight. This was not like all of a sudden I started having all these problems. It was just that probably right after I had Landon, my problems really started escalating and getting really bad. But I have battled constipation probably ever since I was a teenager. And it was at a point where kind of like, I just thought, oh, this is just my body. This is just how it is. I'm just always this way. It doesn't matter how much water I drink, how much fiber I have. It just doesn't matter. This is just how my body is. So I went on for years. And then probably about 5.5 years ago, when I started really diving into my own fitness journey and my business and stuff, did I kind of pay attention to that more and realize like I really needed to get that, get a handle on that. And it was getting better, but I still was never like, I think where I needed to be. I just was improving from where I was maybe all of from teenager into my adult life. After I had my hysterectomy, so before my hysterectomy, I was diagnosed with a condition called Pelvic Congestion Syndrome, which is basically varicose veins all entangled over my uterus, my ovaries, my whole pelvis was filled with them. And that's what actually led me to get my hysterectomy. After my hysterectomy, I got ridiculously constipated. Like, it was so bad. They were putting me on tons and tons and tons of medication to get everything moving along. I was in the worst pain ever. If you followed me on my hysterectomy journey, I was miserable. That can be pretty common. And for me, after every single surgery I've ever had, my C-sections, I had my gallbladder removed, my hysterectomy, all that stuff, I would have problems. But once again, I was like, this is normal, right? What started happening is that I started noticing that I was even having like mucus. Mucus can be a sign. I was having really hard stools and I was having like mucus, or sometimes I would just have mucus. And for what I just thought, nah, whatever. It doesn't happen a lot. It's just probably because I'm really constipated. I didn't think anything of it. Once again, a little bit of a warning flag. Didn't say anything to my doctor because I thought, ew, that's gross. Why would I want to say that to somebody? That's disgusting. And it's even hard to kind of say right now to you guys, I'm sure. I would notice a lot when I would sit for really long periods of time, stand for long periods of time, walking for long periods of time. It was getting to a point when I would work out a lot. I was having a lot of pain. And even after my hysterectomy, which we were really hoping that I was going to start feeling better. So I just kind of like started chopping up, oh, it's just my pelvic congestion syndrome. I'm just having still a lot of pain from that. But I would bloat. I was getting very bloated. I was having a lot of cramping, a lot of pain in my hips and my lower back. No position was comfortable. And I was just in this perpetual cycle of just like, it kept hurting and hurting. It was getting to a point where food, I wasn't able to eat certain things. I had cut out, gluten. I cut out basically all meats. I cut out dairy. I cut out, I'm trying to think, I cut out soy. I literally cut out everything to a point where all I was eating was fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and that was it. That helped a little bit, but still I was having a lot of problems. So that's another signal that something could be really wrong, is that maybe you've eliminated everything out of your diet, things that could be possible, because there's a lot of foods that you can eat that can be inflammatory to your digestive system that can cause problems. So I highly suggest doing elimination diets. I did a lot of those. I did, there's a cleanse that I love to do. It's like a no starvation detox. I had done that several times. It would help, but I would continue to keep having problems. So that's what kind of led me to go in to see my specialist gyno again and say, okay, we really kind of need to dive in of like what more is going on. This is where things got really embarrassing, and they're probably going to be really embarrassing right now. This is where he started asking me questions I had never been asked before, and I was like, how do you know this? So here is a really big sign, ladies, that something could be really going on wrong with your rectum, with your colon, or with your vagina, okay? Is that when I would go to the bathroom, I would feel an urge that like I just couldn't get everything out, and I would have to apply either pressure to the outside of my vagina, or sometimes I would have to internally push inside into my vagina and apply pressure against my rectum to help move things along. Gross, yes. This is why I didn't talk about it, right? Because I'm like, I would never say this to my doctor. I would never say this to my girlfriends. But I found that this is one of the #1 signs that a woman has a potential rectocele, which means that your rectum is falling over and collapsing over into your vaginal walls. This is huge. A lot of women have this problem from pregnancy, from just the weight of the baby, from vaginal delivery. I did not. I had 2 C-sections, but especially women with vaginal deliveries, if you had tearing, years of constipation, like what I dealt with, and you combine all those things together, your rectum can fall either way. Mine collapsed right into my vagina. And I have known women that have ignored this sign for years and years and years on end. And what can start to happen is your rectum will literally start to fall through your vagina, and it can start to come out. So I warn you of this, because if this is something you're doing and you're not really thinking anything of it, like I wasn't going to say anything to anybody, but that could be a warning sign that your rectum is falling right in. I've known women that their rectum has fallen over so much that it's applying pressure onto their uterus, and their uterus starts collapsing into their vagina, and that all starts to prolapse down. So these are all things that you really need to pay attention to and have those difficult conversations with your doctors, even if you're like, Blair, that's so freaking gross, right? Like, but you gotta go have the conversation. If my doctor had not asked me this, I would have continued going on. I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Also, pain with sex, that was definitely something that was happening. I was definitely having some pain with intercourse. I would feel really sore afterwards. It would feel like there was a lot of pressure. I would have a hard time walking or moving, which of course my husband was like, yeah, not in that way though, right? I'm like, no, not like that, dude. Like, it hurts, like not in a good way. So I would be sore from all of that. Let's see. Specialist gyno sent me to a colorectal surgeon because he was concerned that I may have a prolapse. Thank God he did send me, because now did I just have a small prolapse? I ended having 18 inches of my colon had completely prolapsed. It was just laying in my pelvis, crushing my pelvic floor, crushing my, it had crushed my uterus before my uterus had gotten taken out. It was then crushing my bladder. It was crushing my vagina. Like, everything was being totally crushed. So thank God my gyno asked me these questions, and we dug deeper into what the heck is going on, right? And we had that hard conversation of like, what's my bathroom habits like, right? When I went to the colorectal surgeon, and this is where you could refer, I would say, you know, go to your doctor, go to your gyno, go to a colorectal surgeon. A urologist is another one that I've seen a lot of women go to and have these conversations with. But my colorectal surgeon, that's where he really dug in. He was asking things like, you know, tracking my stools. How many stools was I having? What did my stools look like? Stuff like that, where people probably, you don't ever look at your stool and you don't ever pay attention to it, but that's where you got to look at it. And because your stool is trying to tell you if something's wrong. So if you don't look at it and know what it is, like, and this is where I'm even teaching my children and having this conversation with my kids so that they know if something is internally wrong. Usually your stools are one of the number one first signs that something is wrong. It doesn't need to be a prolapse, but it could be a digestive problem. It could be colon cancer. It could be Crohn's. It could be, you know, all sorts of different digestive issues or medical problems can be stemming through your colon and through your stools. He was asking me things like, you know, if you have problems wiping, if you go to the bathroom and then you get up and maybe like 10 minutes later, you're like, I think I need to go again, things like that. So those are kind of the things that I would suggest you do. If you're having any of those symptoms, any of those things, I would start tracking your stools, looking at your stools, writing down your symptoms, food journaling, figuring out maybe what you're eating, what could be triggering things, keeping a good diary of all your symptoms. Because by the time I went into my doctor's, I knew my body real well. I was telling him everything I'd done, everything I tried, every problem I was having. And it got easier to get directed to the doctor that really could better help serve me and figure out what was going on. And you would be surprised if you're on here and you're like, this is crazy to me. You should know, like, I get so many messages from women. This is far more common than you would ever think. When I went to go get signed up for my pelvic floor specialist PT today, they are one of the busiest pelvic, or they're the busiest PT section within their whole office, because pelvic floor dysfunctions similar to mine are huge, especially women, right? Everything our body goes through to deliver babies. We have to learn about pelvic floor health. You need to know what can affect your pelvic floor health, what could be potentially hurting you. And so this is why I'm just making it my duty to raise awareness around the booty as best I can, so that I can help other women so you don't have to go through what I went through, because that was a lot. It's been 18 months of a lot of major surgeries, a lot of healing, a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, a lot of really embarrassing conversations, but it was all needed. And I'm glad that it's, I'm on the other end of everything. So I just want to have the uncomfortable conversations with you guys so that you know what to be looking for. And you can go to your doctors and say, hey, I don't know if this is a problem. You start having conversations with our doctors and having that honest conversation and saying, does this sound normal to you? And not being scared to ask, because I didn't ask, and most of my life I was having warning signs, and I dismissed, thinking, This is just normal for my body, and I don't want that for you. So I love you guys. I hope this was really helpful. Okay. If you have questions though, feel free to post them below. If you're embarrassed to ask certain questions, just privately inbox. We can go more in depth about it, more one-on-one, okay? I love you guys. Have a really great day.